doing it. You supposed to be happy you sitting there with Kid L. Why you mad?
The Kid L Podcast.
Rocking and rolling. It's an honor to have John Barlow on the podcast today, man. What's happening?
What's going on? What's going on? I'm totally excited and glad to be here, and thanks for the opportunity.
I'm excited too, man, because I think it's important that we do look at the constructs of what's happening in Detroit, and I think you can help give perspective on that, especially because you are running for Detroit mayor.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am, man. I just wanted to start off by saying that, sir, you have done a number of great things in terms of your interviews and the things that I've been able to see you participate in, and telling the story, allowing others to tell the story, and I just wanted to commend you and give you your praise, because I'm really excited for what is to come, because I know there's a number of different opportunities that will be around for individuals like yourself, not only for this market but nationally. So we'll talk about that later on.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you.
But, yeah.
I want to talk about you before we get into all the political stuff, getting into the campaign and everything. I want to talk about your life growing up in Detroit.
Definitely. Well, I was speaking earlier with your producer about kind of growing up on all sides of the city. I got my faith base, or my gospel side, from going to church in Downriver, where my grandfather was a pastor for 40 years. I got a sports side from kind of all over, from playing basketball for PSL in the Detroit Public Schools, over at Bates and Renaissance. And then probably more than anything, that programming in the different programs like DAPSEP, which is for, science and math, and some of the other smaller programs that I took part in. It kind of gave me a very diverse experience of what Detroit really is. And a lot of people don't see the whole city growing up. They kind of understand it as they reach their adult years. But I've been someone who's had been blessed and fortunate enough to kind of see everything around Detroit, but even more so, spending summers in Alabama, in Montgomery, Alabama, and then as of the last 6 to 7 years, really traveling around the world, but a lot of time in Atlanta, Miami, DC, really dealing with entertainment, as I did 20 plus years ago, off and on over the course of time as well. And just really venturing out, working businesses, helping people more than anything. That's really my passion. I don't do anything for $1. I do it all for people, because ultimately I believe that's our purpose.
Wow, man. Wow. So it's like kind of like a philanthropy but more so like with your voice and with your commitment to things, right? Definitely.
I think it could be seen from when, like, I had an artist before. I've had multiple artists. I have a young man in Haiti and Dominican Republic. He goes back and forth due to the political climate over there, but speaks 5 different languages, raps and sings right now. But 20 years ago, I came across a situation that, because I'm always trying to help people, I came across an artist, and even though I was trying to manage him and really, the city didn't have anybody on at that time. Stretch Money was the only person. Tone was the only person that really was getting real airplay. Helluva hadn't become Helluva. Shout out to Helluva. But Dobbs, who was my artist at the time, I took to see Jay-Z and Lenny S. And at 20 years old, took him to see Jay-Z and Lenny S in New York. And they asked me, why wasn't I getting put on, or why wasn't he getting put on back in the city? And I said, nobody's putting nobody on in the city. But I didn't understand really the market dynamics, being young, being aggressive, and things like that. So I'm always doing things, trying to break down a wall to see how I can put my city on, how I can put somebody else on, and really elevate everybody. So that's really, whatever industry it is, I've had enough experiences in enough industries and enough advocacy roles to be able to really do that through and through. Like we all threw high school parties at VFW halls and things like that because nothing was open to hip hop or to young people downtown. You didn't see a college party downtown. You don't see it now, but you definitely didn't have an outlet for individuals or an upscale environment for youth or young people in hip hop to be able to gather at. And so by the time I got in college, to make a long story short, by the time I got in college, and then really started to talk to like Mitch down at Club Blue, who I've known for 20 years, who supports my mayoral campaign as well. These relationships started to break open. So now that's why you have the promoters and some of the activity that you had. Now I had Big Sean at the Zoo Bar before he became Big Sean.
Wow.
Yeah. So
what was his name at the time?
I think he had just, if not recently, had came across Kanye at the radio station.
Oh, cool.
And that's how everything happened with him and Ye. And so
Damn,
I've been around for a minute. I'll tell you the stories like. Brent down at Zuba, everything.
Let me Nick, can we cut that fan real quick?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, make sure that's cut it. Wait, so like you knew Sean like on a personal level?
No, not at all. I know Mo Beats I know people around Sean on a personal level. They all know me. It's more like Mo Beats. Some of the others I forget. It's so many names racing through me. Dante Marshall was working with Sean. And he's on the West Coast. He's a photographer / videographer that kind of elevated out of this market and kind of gone other places. But we have a number of those individuals that have kind of matriculated and matured out of this market. And because the market can't retain that type of talent because everything, all the action and all the activity is somewhere else.
Yes, that makes sense, right? Because there's circuits that are going on in other cities that are more powerful and lucrative for artists to be at. And at the time, the city wasn't like hot enough to be able to maintain somebody that was that powerful or like reaching that level of audience, right? Which like when did that change? Like when I guess T Grizzly broke open the doors, obviously.
So I start to black out around the Sada Baby T Grizzly era. Like I started, like you got to think 09. I stopped paying attention to things because I was running for city council.
Oh, cool.
So I did run for office 15 years ago. Before really getting into business and, really fine-tuning advocacy. And so the years are fuzzy for me when it comes to how did it really, all the breakthroughs, all the things that took place. I know one thing, the arguing and the fighting stopped. The East Side, West Side thing, I think Payroll just acknowledged it on the $1 million worth of game show. That when the fighting stopped, that's when people start waking up. I think Atlanta showed what things could be. Yeah. Shout out to all my people in Atlanta. But they taught us something in reverse. You know what I mean? We might have had Eminem. We might have had our radio market before social media really took over. Our radio market was one of the top 10 markets, and we were really, if you go really ask everybody followed our playlist. Our DJs were setting the tone, but we weren't getting credit for it as a market. And so that's why you don't have the evolution of Motown to Detroit hip hop, because we really weren't. And I don't blame it on the DJs. I used to try to blame it on the DJs because of their exposure and not playing. For a long time, Detroit rappers that couldn't get radio DJs to play their music, like KDZ and all them. It would be a show only dedicated to that. They wouldn't get mainstream. Then when they started easing it into the mixes and things like that. So, it's a lot of history. You need to get DJ Emmett and a few of these DJs, old school DJs on here, to share some of these stories.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
So when did you shift your mindset towards like, okay, I want to get involved in community influence? And kind of start taking those roles? What age or what year were we talking about?
Well, we're talking about ever since I was growing up. The church kind of put me in that mindset. I think maybe coming out of high school, going into college, I started really being trained as a community organizer. You wouldn't think there's an actual training program or a job surrounding that type of work, but there are. And that's what kind of introduces you into advocacy work / lobbying work. With government and political science. But ultimately, it was really once I started being trained by Bill O'Brien at the Harriet Tubman organization, which is probably, it might still be around, but my grandfather created an organization called Moses, and that kind of catapulted me into everything. And it's kind of been, no looking back ever since. United Way work with the foreclosure crisis in 2008, and a number of other just grassroots organizing work that, again, led to the 2009 race for city council, which was probably the biggest race ever. 160 candidates, 400 people wanted to be in the race, 160 got on the ballot. But think about 9 seats and someone trying to find you in 160 candidates. That's a hard race to get through. And so we purposely went about that in a very strategic way to see what we could do. And now it's just a time to where I've seen so many individuals like yourself pop up and have so much value. And we're on the cusp and at a fork in the road in Detroit and in Michigan. Because if Detroit fails, Michigan has to look elsewhere, right? And kind of reconfigure things. But Detroit being such a value and an asset to the city and to the region and even to the Midwest, I believe that we have to pick the right decision and the right leader in order to make sure that talent like you stays, can contribute, can build. Also that we reach every family in a way that doesn't make us a second-tier city. It makes us the leading example. There's very few places around the country that celebrates the arts and the culture like we do, or innovates like we do. And I think we've got kind of held up on that whole motor in the Motor City or in the Motown labeling, to where we only think we're cars.
Yeah.
We think we're, part of the assembly line, but we created this, we created so much over the course of time to where I think that innovation really is that driving force behind Detroit and its people. And so, whatever I can do to continue to advocate for those individuals who get left out, who don't have the capital, the jobs, or the homes to do what they need to do, that's why I assert myself in. I think this is the right time to lift that conversation up in Detroit, and that's why I'm running right now.
What do you think as far as you have a business mindset coming into this, right? It's kind of more placed around building businesses, helping businesses grow. Along those lines, what is the biggest tragedy that you're seeing in the business marketplace in Detroit, and how do you fix those holes? So
it can be layered and complex depending on who you're talking to, right? For your neighborhood individual who thinks that they're not being seen and needs opportunities, again, we have to deal with them as an individual and as a family. We also have to make sure that their essentials and their quality of life is at least sustainable, right? And so that means homes and jobs, right? And it also means that if they're an entrepreneur, making sure that we can invest in their business. I think what separates me from the pack is that I actually have a plan. I think the newspapers and the articles have shown that I have an 11-page plan.
You're talking about like $500 million?
Yeah.
Detroit?
Well, I think $500 million is just a drop in the bucket when it comes to how much we should be investing in our businesses. If the community comes with their fair share and the assets and the resources that they have, I think we should be able to match them and get them along the way. With their programs, Motor City Match and others that already do it, it's about accelerating those programs and making sure that we hold the hand of the individual or the business or the team that's trying to get that done within the community, and making sure that they align with the plan that we think they have, but also considering the plan that they have as well. And I think it's just education. A lot of Detroiters, I'll be honest, they're smart, but they don't always get it because there's so much bureaucracy and red tape. And so we're asking them to do something that everybody shouldn't be able to do because we're making it too difficult for them. So we made it the right.
Can you give some examples of what's...
So for instance, some would say that it's about 70 steps to get a business open in Detroit, where others, you should be able to get it down to less than 15, right? And so that's why I want to make one-stop business centers inside of these community innovation hubs to really spur the growth and things of that nature. So I am business, but you got to also look at the community aspect of it and where I'm trying to go with a citizen dashboard that will allow every citizen to get these essentials, but also navigate how to sustain their home in different programs, but also be able to help them operate, open up their business and navigate that red tape. Wow. And so it's really I'm a tech guy and I'm a business guy. So when I think about systems and I think about why people aren't getting help, for me, we're not engaging them and we're not talking to them and we haven't set up a dashboard or a bird's eye view of what they can do, how they can navigate and where they should be.
Is all the red tape, when you're talking about it takes 70 steps to start a business in Detroit because everybody's trying to get their mouths fed? Is that kind of like everybody, you got to pay a bunch of different people to get open? You have to get certified from a bunch of different people? Or is there 70 steps because there's something that's restricting some type of eligibility because Detroit is worried about people just starting businesses and somehow hurting the city with their businesses?
Well, I think it comes down to, first, you got to go downtown. You can file an organization on the state's website, but if you really want to open up a brick and mortar, if you want to know about the permitting or licensing, and you're not fluent in reading policy and law or ordinances, it can become confusing. You have questions to ask, nuances to get through. And so because every business is different, it's always a case-by-case scenario. And so one of the things that I talk about with holding every hand in these one-stop business centers is more so it's about answering the questions and educating people before they get down there. Because if they go down there with the wrong information, or if they go down there not really understanding the process or who they should talk to, then they can go ask a department one thing, but they really should have been in a whole different department asking them because that was the first step. And I think that it's about communication and customer service. I think customer service under the Duggan administration has been a little bit better. You used to go down there and not want to go back sometimes because people were just tired. You know what I mean? There was no morale at City Hall. And it's kind of got better, but there could be a few more smiles and things like that to really power you through. The people are great. I'm not downing them. I'm just saying that this new generation and this new day and time calls for a culture that is totally paramount. Like, you want to be award-winning customer service, right? You want to have everything laid out to where it's a 1, 2, 3. And I think that's what you're referring to is that it needs to be simplified so much to where a kindergarten can do that. Now, if a kindergarten can't get through it, not to say that business can only be done by a kindergarten or that Detroit people have the literacy rate or the education level of a kindergarten, no. But if it's that difficult, or if these many people are saying that these are the problems, then we got to simplify it.
But why do you think you did, like, if just using these numbers as an example, because I know you probably just threw them out there, but saying 70 steps to start a business in Detroit, and you're trying to cut it down to a fraction of that, right? The question is, what makes it so difficult? Why is it so difficult to start a business? And how can you reduce it to 15 steps or a fraction of the steps that it takes now to start a business in Detroit?
So let's say, for instance, we're talking about, so when you really look at it, by the time you get through BZNA, by the time you submit your permits and get your licensing, if anything is needed, a lot of times those things aren't being done in parallel. And there's some prerequisites to getting to the next step. Also, you talk about design reviews and things of that nature, and or the time and what needs to be submitted. The portals, they're cleaning up the process. Let's not get it wrong. They are trying to clean up the process. But we really have to look at all the systems, all the software across the board. And then what it is that we're really wanting the customer or the business owner to be able to have to do in order to get through that. Because if they come down to City Hall to ask questions, and then they get through one office, and then another office is saying go online, then why aren't those two processes kind of combined to create one, holistic portal and things of that nature? So
it's like a big deterrent to even try to start a business because of all the loopholes you have to go, or all the sections you have to go to.
Yeah. It's almost like a whole lot of dots in the map and you have to draw the line.
Right.
Why do I have to draw the line? Why do I have to draw the line on the business owner? I should be told, like, okay, this is what I need to do. The next step, somebody tell me, this is what I need to do.
Right.
But what it is that this city is kind of built off of consultants and middlemen.
Yeah, that's what I was saying when I feel like you have to pay a bunch of people to figure out what the hell you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
It's almost like they want you to make a bunch of transactions before you can even get to the step of like starting the business almost. Is that true in some way?
I've been paid plenty of times to get people through the process.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been, sometimes I think it's unfair because it's like, why aren't you just helping this person? Of course, I need, to create a life of my own and things of that nature. And it is a job, and I do it at a high level now. So much on a local level in Detroit. There's a lot of my friends, when they need help, I just say, all right, go here. I'll go down there and check on it for you and stuff like that. But you do have to end up hiring somebody to really stay on the process to get all the way through and to make sure that you're not connecting the dots wrong.
So you're going to create an infrastructure that helps people start businesses way quicker and way easier than what's
definitely
available now. And is that something that if you were elected, it would be like start soon or quickly, or do you already have it all kind of like mapped out, or is this like a long, lengthy process before people are going to be able to see it in action?
No, this is when I talk about fast action, we talk about first 100 days.
Wow.
You start to see things popping up.
Incredible.
And this is why it's so important. The strategic partners and the stakeholders within Detroit, the leaders aren't coming together and really having a roadmap for how to build their community economically, from an economic development perspective and a programming perspective. And that's why I say reach every family, because when you really look at going into the neighborhoods, if you have those leaders surround that table and say, this is how we're going to go after every family. Now, where's all the programming? Where's all the assets, all the activities, all the resources? Let's all put them together and say, this is how we're going to build these community innovation hubs, and this is what's needed. So, for instance, on the east side, you have that new sports facility in Chandler Park, I believe. Now it's time to look at around there and see how many. Do we have a warehouse near WC3? Possibly. Maybe I own it. Maybe some of my network owns it. But how can we put a center there, like a one-stop business hub right outside WC3, right with a sports facility around, to really start to make that neighborhood thrive and really start to build the businesses off of those main thoroughfares and vessels. And so you really have to understand what legacy Detroiters have prime real estate and prime assets to give over to the plan, and not give like they're going to give it away, but contribute. And to be able to say, I want to play in this plan, but the city and the players and the leaders at the table who are responsible for building that community up, they're not all talking. But last year I held 13 roundtables, 300 leaders came out, and we started talking about those plans, started talking about the gaps and the needs that they had. And I believe that within the first 100 days, you're going to start to see parts of my plan being piloted. And within that first year, you would have started to see major progress. I can't give you any percentages on how much will be completed, but in that first year, I plan on having at least 30 to 45% of this done, and the rest of the projects being able to be completed within the second and third year. Because in 4 to 8 years, I'm setting up to start to bid for the Olympics, because that's where we were back in 62 and 68. So I'm not talking about tomorrow. I'm talking about accelerating where we are now, getting there before AI and robotics catches up with us, so we can retool, get our youth and our families working again.
Yes. When you're talking about the population, I believe Detroit's like between 600,000 and 700,000.
Yeah.
It's a big, you have to come up with something crazy in order to dedicate time to every single family and home, right? Is that overwhelming to think about, or is there a percentage that you think of people that are okay, percentage of the population that's okay, and then you have to deal with how many hundreds of thousands of other people that need help or assistance right now?
Yeah, so when I say reach every family, I'm literally mean reach every family.
Wow.
Every family and every individual should be able to log in to a citizen dashboard, period. And from that citizen dashboard, based off of your profile and based off of the questionnaires and surveys that you answer, you should be able to access certain programs, activities, and or resources to better your life that the city is involved in or agencies around the city are involved in.
Isn't like MyWAM something similar to that?
There's some state platforms out there that do it, but there's no city platform that has blockchain technology leveraged in the equation for a citizen dashboard. And then all the things that you can do with blockchain technology after that then become possible. But right now, nobody's talking in that light. And I don't want to go into detail about what blockchain is and how it can do, how it's better for these systems and things of that nature. But
I mean, it's pretty brilliant if you could go on your computer and have assistance available through some type of portal or some type of website, because it's like, well, how would you have done it before? You'd have to go places. You'd have to go online, wait forever. But now if it's mainstream through a computer, if it's just like fast lined, then you're going to be able to process so many people way quicker, right? Then versus people having to go through like buildings to buildings to buildings to figure out everything, right? Are the resources available to people, but they just can't get a hold of it because of the process that it takes to get to those things? Or is it literally like these resources are not available, and we're going to make them available, plus we're going to figure out a way for you to get these resources through the internet or through the computers?
Yeah, I think it's several things going on. One is deterring for regular individuals to go after resources and not be successful. So if you've done it once, twice, or 3 times and you weren't successful because the application process was nothing, you never qualified in the first place, that could be deterring, right? Secondly, from agency to agency, and even for one thing to be done, you might have to go to multiple places to even qualify, to start to submit in your application to qualify for resources or any help or assistance. And that's just from a quality of life, lights, gas, those, renter assistance and things of that nature. So attacking the housing market is a thing that, again, I don't think really too many people understand that's running for mayor right now, to the point that I do when it comes to real estate, housing market values, and projects that are on the table to help them get through. So you got to, I guess, pointing back to what I just said in terms of we have to look at where is the help in the community. Right now we have churches that give assistance, they give food. They give other things. We have organizations that do the same. I have people and young men that handle these youth all day long and handle probably more youth in population than the city youth job employment program every summer. So how is it that we're not looking at what their capabilities are and their resources when they're doing more than the city? So we have to really bring them into the process to really offer that family or that individual a holistic approach to being able to satisfy, whether it's their time, their money, their development, whatever it might be.
When you look at people who do help try to push resources in Detroit, we could talk about monetarily, like Dan Gilbert or somebody of that nature, and they're putting hundreds of millions of dollars into the city. Have you looked at those plans and how those blueprints worked, and have you seen results from them in a positive way, or have you found that the resources weren't used to the best possibility?
Well, I think that you have to look at a city. Anytime you're looking at a area or a city, you have to look at its major investors, right? And it's not to say that they own the city. You have to think about what are they investing in and how are they going to benefit. And so when Dan Gilbert gives or says that he's going to give, for instance, for the housing market, $500 million, give or take, you have to understand how that's going to be distributed and how the operational aspect of that looks. That $500 million operationally might look like 30 to 40%, depending on how much programming goes into really distributing that money. I don't believe that's $500 million straight cash that's going into homes, and are those homes going to be donated or put in place for those who can afford it to buy?
Kind of like gentrification type.
Exactly. So you really have to look at the plan. Now, I'm not saying that I've totally digested what that amount of money was dedicated for his housing initiative. I'm pretty sure it's all well and good, but you got to think anybody giving money back in that amount they get to say how they want to spend it. Nobody should be, if they're giving that much to Detroit, I don't think you should really question it. However, at the same time, you do need to understand what it is doing to the legacy Detroiters, and is it displacing them or doing anything like that? So you do have to vet the plan and be considerate. And so,
but there's nothing they can do about it besides regulate who's allowed to buy or buy the property.
No. Actually, there's a lot of things that can be done, and that's when does affordable housing become affordable at that point? Because is that money being invested to sell houses at market value, or is it being invested to give houses to families that need starter homes so that they can save up enough to get to their next house and things like that? So you really got to look at the full business model of what's going on. And so that's why media is so important, because once we go do our research, you're able to retell that story to say, like, hold on, I read the plan. This is really what it says, and this is how it's being carried out. And sometimes they'll present the plan as such and then go back and do something else. And then when it's done, now we're all looking up like, hold on, what happened? Well, so-and-so changed, so we had to change the plan. Well, why y'all ain't tell us why it was happening?
So when they're making these plan initiatives and they're like pretty much throwing the money around saying like, this is how much we're investing into the city, they can make it seem like it's for a specific cause or reason, and then kind of change it in the future to make it where it benefits the people who invested in the first place.
Yeah, you see that a lot of times when they say misuse of money, misuse of funds, or like the ARPA money or demolition money at times might get misallocated, or somebody might get too much more than what they should. So that still can happen if Mr. Gilbert gives $500 million. It can get, if you don't have the right eyes on it, just like we lost $40 million over at the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy because the guy was taken out, and you had all those people, including, city council members.
Can you break that down for us a little bit?
The gentleman, I believe, I don't know his name, really shouldn't go into detail about him or anything like that, but the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy lost $40 million. 40. Now, we had members of city council, even current candidates for mayor over there sitting on the board, but it gets siphoned out and it gets pretty much stolen. And so the question becomes, what type of controls do we have in place to prevent these type of things from happening? I've sat on the board for the Lutheran churches, and they had $10,000, not from the Lutheran churches, but for Accident Common, that was a Lutheran organization. And I've already said it now, so if I get in trouble for it, whatever. But organizations like that and others have been taken advantage of by the banking system, because identity theft and things like that have occurred for people to be able to get access to funds and extract funds out the account. And so I'm not saying that the Riverfront Conservancy is the same as all these little people that are getting money stolen or things of that nature and getting displaced by either banking laws or practices or not having to return the money. What I am saying is the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy had $40 million. We had leadership over there watching it. It leaves. We don't have the tech to catch it. And we need blockchain and other things infused to the management and accountability of the systems in order for that not to happen.
So a lot of corruption's happening when money is being allocated towards the city in any type of way. Is it corruption, or is it just mishandled by?
It's both. I think you have some that end up getting their fingers wet and their fingers sticky, and then you have some that we've allowed bad actors and bad players to come into the market, and that's not good. I can't begin to tell you how many times that I've been in scenarios where, and it's not always outsiders. I think it's more so we have greed kind of takes over, and then you just have some bad players in the market that do some mischievous things. Like, I've seen all types of concerts and things go bad, and bad promoters out there. Thank God for Suleiman and others at the Right Productions who've been managing Aretha Franklin and the Shane Park Theater all this time, which is a city-owned property, but it's managed by their company. Them and others have been really keeping the entertainment game going, and I just can't thank them enough for holding the city together.
Yeah, there's people that are trying to do the right things, right? And then there's people that, like you said, see an opportunity, which is in every city. It's in every state, it's in every country. It's not like it's something foreign that to happen. Which kind of brings me to a question of, if you are okay with answering this, if you don't, it's totally okay. But when we talk about people being skeptical of certain situations, obviously Kwame Kilpatrick was a person who had a little bit of both sides, where people highly praised him and some people were opposite of that. How did you feel about his term, and do you feel any of that resonance to today, where if that's relatable to anybody who is running for mayor or who has run for mayor after him?
I think a lot of people got to understand Kwame was 30 when he got a mayor.
Damn.
He was young. Nobody's 30 running right now. Everybody's 37, 38 or older. Even Mary is 38. I apologize. Council President Mary Sheffield is 38. I want to respect her to the utmost.
I thought she was like 26. That's crazy.
I'm pretty sure she'll appreciate you for saying that. But no, I want to give it all the other candidates in the race the utmost respect. And I truly admire her for all the things that she's trying to break barriers for. I ran for city council 15 years ago before anybody of that age had ever made council. So that was when I was 24. Kwame had just finished his old tenure as mayor. I got the same questions 15 years ago.
Right on.
So his legacy, whether people see it as good or bad, he was the first of his kind. He was the hip-hop mayor. And so we have to consider what that means. Our hip-hop mayor got taken down. So where does that leave hip-hop and our generation who so gravitates and calls that their own, right? Even though it wasn't founded with us, but we still, I believe, are the hip-hop generation. The last 30, 40 years, 50, I think it was the 50-year anniversary of hip-hop, right? Yeah. And so you really got to look at what that says about our generation. Right. We've had others to rise up since then. You got Jasmine Crockett down there. You have, I wouldn't say J.D. Vance is the hip-hop generation, but you have a 40-year-old vice president right now. I mean, that's not a black vice president, but it is a 40-year-old vice president. So you really got to kind of consider, what is America saying to music? What is this in hip-hop, the genre? What is it saying to this generation? But ultimately, what does it say to this new guard that I believe that the torch has been trying to be passed over to, and the seats at the table really need to have representation from this new guard and this new generation?
Well, it is insane to see like presidents and mayors and council supporting the Detroit hip hop scene so much. Like, Donald Trump taking photos with, Peasy and I Swear Vazo, and Kamala did an interview with I Swear Vazo. Yeah. So it's like they understand, like, get in touch with the culture, get in touch with these figures. And Detroit, Mary Sheffield, obviously these events that are being thrown and everything like that. Your involvement with the hip hop scene, it's like you guys know that these are people that inspire the city and inspire the community. So it's good to talk to them because their vouch is just as powerful as anybody else's. Isn't it? Because they got the biggest reach, don't they? Like if you look at a rapper right now, like who has a bigger reach in Detroit than the rappers?
Okay, so
and influence.
So I'm a little indifferent on a few different points, but I agree with you. But these are some lines that I see things a little bit differently. These rappers like PZ Vezo and even Skilla Baby, who I coach, they are being advocates.
Yes.
Advocates for the community. The question becomes, what are they advocating for? Then the question becomes, do they know who's leading the charge for that initiative that they're advocating for? If they're able to answer all those questions, then we could talk about their value and the validity of their endorsement or their influence in the market. If not, then they're just creating noise.
I agree with you on the point that you said validity, but you still can't. It still is the influence at the end of the day, because regardless of what's in their, like, why they're doing what they're doing, people, hundreds of thousands of people are still seeing that they're standing next to that person in particular, and so the influence is still. They're like, oh, he's standing next to Trump. All right, maybe got to think about that.
Is it? Get this. Is it? So that's interesting that you say that, because Trump is in office, and I think Vezzo went to Kamala and he went to Trump, right?
Yeah, he did an interview with Kamala, and then Trump took a photo with Peasy and Vezzo. So we can't really say that they're it's kind of hard to gauge how much value they had to the last election if it was for either candidate, right? So I'm yet to see how much value they really bring in swinging votes. Okay.
But do they have influence? Anytime they appear in front of a camera, they have influence. I don't care if they eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. They got influence.
But your point is, too, that they don't know, if they don't understand the back ends of everything that they're supporting, then it's not really, like, valid, is what you're saying.
I didn't say it wasn't valid, because they still can voice their opinion, and it is valid, right? So I will never take anything away from any rapper or hip-hop artist that gets into play. What I will say is this. Do you have a hip-hop caucus? Even if it's not called the hip-hop caucus, do you have your own caucus? That means, or an association where you can properly advocate and do the work necessary to get your agenda across? If not, then you're making noise at election time, and that's just like the leaders that you talk about. You're falling into the get in front of the camera trap, just like you would say that these leaders aren't doing anything.
Yes.
So if you can't follow through with the advocacy and change something and move the needle, then you're just making noise, and we don't need more noise. We need more follow through.
You have to look at it from, like, and I know you already understand this perspective, right? If you're an artist in Detroit and then Donald Trump calls you and is like, yo, we want you to take a photo next to Donald Trump, he could be saying the worst shit ever that week. Stuff that could destroy the country, but you're like an artist that's like, yeah, I'm going to take a photo next to Donald Trump. He's the biggest person in the world. But if your intention behind it is just for the camera time or the media presence and not actually the mission behind it, then that is like what you were calling making noise, essentially. Is that?
Yeah, think about the difference. My bad. Think about the difference between Ice Cube and Peasy and Vezzo last election cycle.
Right.
There's a very big dynamic. There's a spectrum.
Yeah.
You have, I'm taking a picture to where I need you to acknowledge my agenda.
Yes. And when you don't come with an agenda, that's like it's just like a waste of time.
Yeah.
Because you could come in and say, listen, if we're doing this, we need to there's certain things in motion, right?
Yeah. Like even in my Reach Every Family and my Money, Jobs, and Homes agenda, I have some very good points that I really haven't released it. Matter of fact, I released it on your show.
Cool.
I'm about to create a Detroit film office once elected mayor.
Wow.
It's needed. Film and entertainment. It's needed. Because, well, let's just look at Atlanta. They have a Detroit film office, and you telling me we don't do enough independent Tubi films and other Prime Video films in order to be able to have a film office to support our filmmakers?
The way I look at the entertainment scene in Michigan is that the circuit there's not enough traffic in order to build the infrastructure at the rapid rate that Atlanta and LA is doing right now, because LA has a constant filtration of celebrities and like public figures and icons that they can always stay in a circuit and always make the money. Hold on, let me break this down for you. Atlanta's the same way. It's a constant circuit of artists flying in, flying out, people that already live there. And this is my argument to everything, and Texas as well. Here's my argument to everything. It's harder to do it in Detroit because normally everybody who does succeed and that has that power to make you want to stay here has flown away already. They've already left and lived somewhere else. So they're building these other circuits and staying in that circuit. While in Detroit, it's like there's like a hovering of people that are okay and succeed and make you want to stay and be in the entertainment industry. But once they get to a certain point, they're gone, and then it just becomes empty again. And the people that are flying in here to work, they're just making money off of somebody and leaving right away.
Yeah.
So it's not like a constant circuit of like people that live here that are stars and people that are flying in and out to work here. That's the problem.
Yeah. So I totally agree with you. Our market is not it will never be the entertainment capital of the world, right? Unfortunately,
even though the best shit's coming out of here.
True, but if it's the innovation capital of the world, that changes the scope, right? that means that you're not coming here because we just got the best tax credits and stuff for your film. You're coming here because you're trying something new. You want something fresh. You want the latest of the latest. And that's what I'm talking about is if our entertainment constituency or advocates who want to ambassador into the political scene, if they want to do that, then advocate for something that's going to get you across. I heard you talking about Chanel D, I think.
Chanel Dominique.
Yep. Yeah, she sits on the Detroit Board of Entertainment. I mean the Detroit Entertainment Commission.
Yeah, man, that's another unfortunate example. Like 313 weekend, right? It's like, they booked an arena to perform at, a venue, and then the venue canceled on them, and then none of the Detroit artists were able to circulate and showcase, the promotion of the city and help highlight it. And it's like all these things are going wrong because I don't want to get into the specifics of it because I don't want to get in trouble because I'm friends with these people.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that holds people back from having these events from happening, unfortunately.
Well, get this. I don't know what happened with the 313 day. Yep. I don't know Chanel that much. Mm-hmm. I do know of the Detroit Entertainment Commission. I do know how Chanel was appointed to the Detroit Entertainment Commission. And all I can say is this. When you have a leader and hopefully a mayor that's been in the entertainment game for a very long time, who's had relationships with venues for 20 plus years, who can tell you why Miami and Atlanta scene right now is just now merging with the big venues and the big concerts and the things that it does from a independent perspective, not a corporate or a label perspective or a Live Nation perspective, even though I love Live Nation. Don't cancel me, Live Nation. But when you look at it from how those markets are doing it, and then look at what we can do here. When you have a leader like that, which is someone like me in charge, you don't get no venue to cancel 313 day because it's some mess. And if you did, I'm going to have 2 or 3 other venues lined up to switch the situation. But when your paperwork is tight, when you do business, you don't have failed situations like that. I don't care if we're doing it here in Metro Detroit, but shout out to Double D. Double D ain't gonna let no venue cancel on no 313 day if he's involved, but we're not engaging the right stakeholders. The ones that have power, the ones that's been in the game. Everybody's trying to reinvent the wheel because they're using somebody else to kind of make it happen. But Chanel has my number. Anytime a venue cancels on you, please call me. I would love to settle make it happen for you.
Incredible. Yeah, and it's like because you were here and because you did the underground stuff and understand the culture and you were really, surrounded by the culture growing up. It's like you have a heavy understanding of what's actually happening. So it's easier for you to have empathy and understanding to what's actually needed because you've been there probably.
Yeah, I done sold mixtapes out my trunk.
Yeah.
I've been that person who goes door to door trying to sell Comcast cable because that's the only opportunity that a 20-year-old in college had when going at Wayne State. Like I've been, even though privileged to be in certain rooms, I haven't been given the opportunity that nepotism and other handouts.
Don't you have family members they could help?
Well, the funny part is all my family has overgiven to a lot of people, and we haven't got nothing in return.
So you never got $1 sent to you? Just here's a couple $1 million.
No,
nephew?
I'll be honest with you. My grandfather helped so many different people while he was born, and as soon as he passed, every mouth closed, every hand went shut. Some of the real troopers who were, really vested in me and my family, they stuck around, but people get your flowers while you are here because people will forget about your legacy, which starts at home. People will forget about your family as soon as you leave. And I think it's so important that you just give of yourself. And that, and again, that is why I believe I have a great feel and not a feel, a respect.
Yeah.
A respect for seeing every person for who they are. And that's why I can't take a leadership position and not take a very clinical approach to every individual. Because I've been there. I go down to the bus station just to see if it's not cold out anymore. But when it's cold, we got people sleeping on on the bus seats down at the main terminal. Is it because we don't have any shelters, or is it because they don't know how to get there? And so when I see someone standing on Woodward, we have that whole corridor right there, Mack and Woodward, right before you get to Little Cedars, where, there are people right there that need help.
Yeah.
And you have so many people that drive past them every single day. And so anytime we have those in our midst that are underserved or disenfranchised or marginalized, and we're not doing everything we can to kind of get them to a better place in life, my heart goes out. And that goes for the rapper who's struggling, to the barber who wants a second job or trying to start a business and can't get through the red tape, or to the podcaster who wants a better set or wants to teach youth and can't navigate the school system because the mayor doesn't have any control to really, or influence to really do what it needs to do in the schools. And so whether it's fixing schools, which I will have an influence on over in the first 100 days, I'll be putting my whole hammer down on the whole school district. You can tell the superintendent and all the board members, if you don't want Barlow in the midst, don't elect him. But I'm coming with every last thing that I have. And it's because I've been watching the school board since the 90s. And when I tell you that we went from 200,000 to 40,000 students, that's where your family is messing up at. That's why we have a whole paradigm shift that needs to occur in order to get community back on track, because they're not able to get prepared for the investment that is coming, has come, or should be coming.
Wow. What is the first approach that it will take to be able to impact these schools? Like, what can you do differently that's not being done right now?
A lot of people talk about curriculum. A lot of people talk about resources. A lot of people talk about morale in terms of the literacy rate of students and how they're being engaged and things of that nature. I really think it starts with the parents. And that's why I say you need to change family dynamics to fix school, but you got to be able to get into school to be able to help change family dynamics. And so it's a parallel approach. I think one of the biggest things that you can do to start to fix the schools is first start to look at, one, how are we engaging parents? And you got to look at Detroit Parent Network and some other organizations. But you got to look at what is that real relationship between teacher, community, principal, community, and really see, are we doing the right social work activities around these families? One case in point is it's reported, some would say that it's reported 3,000 to 4,000 out of that 40,000 students are homeless students.
Wow.
That's not the number. Because when you really start to look at or classify or categorize homeless students, you have to also look at not necessarily the foster care system, but you have to look at what students don't have a consistent home day in and day out.
Right, like if they're at their auntie's house or something like that.
Monday, uncle's house Tuesday, daddy's house Wednesday, mama's house Thursday. And so you have to look at the support system. And that's similar to how you have to look at the mental health arena. How are we dealing with that mental health patient? And not to compare kids to mental health patients, but I'm just saying, when you look at the family and you look at the person that we're trying to address, what does the family structure look like before we start suggesting, redirecting, or telling them this is the program for them?
Right.
Have we done a full assessment?
Well, when you're talking about how many students there are, right, and who would you consider who would you consider the mediators of that are approaching these children and families? What's the individual's service called that approaches each family to kind of do this analysis?
Well, Detroit Public Schools, I don't believe, when you look at the Detroit Public Schools or DPSCD, you have to look at how they're marketing to their students, to Detroit students, how they're engaging the families, et cetera, et cetera. And they've tried different marketing techniques over the years. The issue is that every time a new superintendent comes on, you either have a school board that's coming in or going out, and there's no consistency in terms of strategic plan. And then you have issues with how the school, do we build a new school? Do we refurbish the first one? So the capital planning is being done by just almost a turnover of the last 30 years to where you really don't have any real plan taking place. You almost kind of got a patching up of the old plan, trying to recreate new. You don't have anyone there long enough.
Well, it has to be a money issue, right?
Well, it's been a money issue and a takeover issue. I mean, Detroit Public Schools has a long history of state takeover versus the administrations that it's had. It just can't get right. And so the only thing that it hasn't had is a true mayoral influence without any emergency manager or state hovering over it in order to really change the landscape and change the dynamics of who's participating. I continue to say that you need a leader that understands all stakeholders. Once you have a leader that understands all stakeholders, you can call everyone to the table. If not, you have a leader that's either playing popularity politics, using their pulpit or their association to the side as, something that they can push money to or do something better for or, give advantage to when you don't have anyone thinking about everybody. I say a lot of times in Southwest Detroit and where a lot of Hispanics and Latinos are, they rarely get mentioned. And then when you look at how many schools are dedicated to them and things of that nature, they normally end up having to do for themselves and really create their own environment with or without DPS. And so you just kind of got to look at all dynamics when you start talking about the schools, because I'm not just talking about DPS. I'm talking about really helping to empower charter schools as well. It's really looking at the education system. And then you got to also consider this, and I think you can agree with it, that the new internship and the new pathway to work or entrepreneurship isn't the same anymore. Mm-hmm. It starts a lot of time with something that you're doing, which is having a community, having influence and thought leadership, showing that you have experience and that you can move people and get initiatives across, and being on the front lines of having your voice heard in order to get into that position. I don't care if that's someone applying for a management job or someone trying to be the next, Warren Buffett. It kind of goes into this new digital age of workforce versus the industrial society that we were living in.
When we're looking at the core, because everything comes down to self-responsibility, right? Like if everybody's responsible for themselves, then everything works easier in societies, right? Can you agree with that? Like if everybody's responsible for themselves and
if that could be the case,
that could be the case. I'm not pointing at people and saying that they're not being responsible. I'm saying that is the core of everything, right? So when you're looking at a family and saying if each individual is responsible and they have the resources accessible, they have a better chance of thriving or helping the community and helping everything around them, right? There's disadvantages that make it more difficult for people to be able to be totally responsible for what's going on with themselves as much as their community too. So one thing that I've heard a lot from a lot of friends from the city, and some statistics are showing that a lot of families are single parent homes in Detroit. So when that one part is missing, if a father is missing or a mother is missing and is out of the picture and that finance isn't available or those resources aren't available, even that communication between a parent and a child, it can cause a lot of turbulence to help those families because they have so many disadvantages and lack of resources. With the single parent homes, what's the best way to help them in their situation?
Yeah, I think you bring up an excellent point. Reaching every family, especially the single homes, are so important. A lot of our communities have been overcome and become numb to trauma. Mm-hmm. That goes from the military family to the family who's African American, who's still dealing with slavery and oppression from that whole history. Latinos and Hispanics have their own, Asians have their own. Every community has their own trauma. I don't care where you go. And then also think about the generational traumas, whether it be child abuse, molestation, all those other factors that can happen within a family. So no family's perfect. I'm not perfect. I don't think anybody's perfect. If you find a perfect person, tell me about them. But so I don't think single parent households are the only ones that need it. However, to your question, you need, again, all the stakeholders in the community, the fraternities, the churches, the PAL, the AUs. you need all of them talking to each other. And what happens a lot is when we see someone doing it, we say, oh, it's already done. It's being taken care of. It's okay. But then we don't understand that there's still gaps that need to be filled, and that person can't carry the whole weight of helping that family themselves. It's a village. So if you see somebody helping someone, that's the best time to raise your hand and go hop on so you can reach a family. My Reach Every Family plan doesn't just talk about me reaching every family as the mayor of the city. It means that we're putting in incentives for you to help go reach your block so that you can be part of something that's even better that's surrounding you.
Right.
So you should be incentivized to share what's going on when you have a community meeting. But there's nothing technically or technology-wise connecting all those dots to incentivize being a good citizen.
Would it be incentivized, be something like monetary or like grants or like?
Well, I mean, there could be a number of different things. It all really becomes what is the point system within that ecosystem that we build. And so I'm not saying it's going to be perfect when we roll it out, but I will say it's going to be a first of its kind.
Yes.
And that ultimately there's models in place to make it work efficiently and very effectively in a very near future once I become elected. But and I don't want to keep on pointing back to my platform as the all end all be all solution, because I'm only surrounding myself with the best people. However, when it comes to helping every family out, especially those who are disadvantaged or has that trauma, I went to River Rouge High School. It was a panel about raising our black sons. It's about trauma to solution. After we identify the trauma, there's normally a biological case transpiring. And that's what adverse childhood experiences in that whole study, ACEs, prove that once you have trauma psychologically, your body starts to respond to that trauma in a very negative way. And so how do we have a doctor, both a psychological doctor and a biological doctor, deal with that individual and or that family to understand what are their eating patterns? What are they currently experiencing? Is there any air quality issues? Looking at climate democracy, and then transitioning them into a solution. Whether it be a therapist, whether it be a dietitian.
And I think that's where people start questioning, where the money comes from to do it all. Because if you just say 100,000 people need these services, let's just say that's a crazy number, but let's just say it was that. Where does the money for the therapy come from? Where does the money from the people who figure out and assess that these people need therapy or that they need some type of help and guidance or mentorship or anything like that? Like, how do they get the money to be able to to fund these ideas and these ideas? And I think that's where people start questioning, like, how do we get the resources to help people? Because I always say, like, schools could help every single student, but where do they get the money to help the students? Like, there's students that don't follow the curriculum and they don't understand the curriculum because they're more creative. So people would be like, why don't they make creative classes? Well, that has to get funded. Somebody has to pay for these things to happen. And then if the people who are funding it look at the situation and go like, well, it's biological, well, it's in their brain, well, it's like something that they can't really just easily get over, why would we believe in that and why would we fund that?
You bring up an excellent point. It's like, I've seen a lot of stories and testimonials about how it normally has come from comedians, but I've seen some real life stories about how certain people got put in special ed.
Yeah, I got there. I was there. I was literally, for like 2 years.
Without really having a full assessment, right?
Yeah, it was crazy.
And I think society is smarter sometimes than what it does. And we allow leaders and other people to stay in place when we should be advancing and progressing. And so what we call what we do in order to move the ball forward for individuals and to not misdiagnose, to create free, open environments, to allow for housing to take place or boarding to take place because this child can't get a consistent home, so let's provide them a consistent home. I think we really have to, again, be practical and simplistic when we look at how it is that we approach certain things, because it doesn't take a whole program to make sure this kid is eating for the rest of the year.
Right.
And having a square meal. No, it takes 2 or 3 people to make sure that this kid is eating and has a square meal. But if they're not directly tied to this kid, then how can we possibly incentivize that so that we don't have to go figure out how $100 got lost in a program that some organization was running?
Yes.
It's really getting the dollar to who can fix the problem.
Yes.
Or getting the resource and the help and the support to who can fix the problem. Again, like I said, we have Bobby Christian is a great example. I just met a young man named Devin. Devin challenged me. Now get this. I was youth pastor on the east side. I know the east side pretty deep. I'm still on staff at the church on the east side. 94 Mayoral, Mount Pleasant, Missionary Baptist Church. But I go on Jefferson and Chalmers, and literally I stop wherever. I pull up on your family reunion, your barbecue, introduce myself, and hopefully I know somebody there. Hopefully y'all don't kick me out because I'm getting acquainted. But I stopped at a birthday party because I just saw cars outside this event hall, and the gentleman knew my friend Bobby, and this guy says, "You're not just coming around here, are you? Because I'm with these kids every day."
Oh, yeah.
It starts to eat at my heart because I'm saying, you another story of how you not getting help while you doing the right thing, and they're saying that they're doing so much more for everybody else. The story is not matching up with what's being reported in the media and then what's being done on the street. But I hear 100 of those stories every day. Now, some of them are right on point. Some of them, they probably just didn't do what they were supposed to do. But it's still, if they're trying, why is it so hard for us to support them?
Yeah, you got to look at like Zeek and New Era, right?
Mm-hmm.
And New Era is helping rebuild communities. I think they go across the country now more so, but like Detroit is one of the places that they constantly are helping to rebuild. And you do see some, like, you imagine even if they make an Instagram post that it would get like 100,000 likes or whatever, but it's like the city doesn't really, they do support, but it's not enough support. And I was talking to a few people on why that might be the case, and people were just saying like they don't like when somebody tells them what to do or somebody tells them like what they should be doing with their time or helping the community in a way that's like outlandish. They like, if they're gonna help, it has to be like, you have to be cherished for it, or almost praised for doing so, and not just doing it.
So I don't know how much New Era got when they gave out money for this last run. I know they're trying to expand the program for addressing the high crime areas.
Yeah.
In the mayor's state of the city, from what I see, now this is not me doing a whole lot of research and going into really the nuances, but it appears that the investment that they gave to New Era deemed improved results.
Amazing.
The question becomes, are we doubling down on that effort, which it looks like the city is. But as you said, how can we support them more? And I think it takes us as a village and working with this and telling the city what we're going to do to match them and what support we need to get them more if that's how we feel. And then I think it goes back to the media telling the story. Right now, if I knew there was a direct need for New Era, I would share it, right? So maybe it's making sure that Zeek, I love you, Zeek. You know I love you. Making sure that Zeek has some extra social media support so it can tell his story more, so that everybody knows they need donations to keep on moving, right? And so, or maybe the city, instead of running ads about these things that it claims it's doing, run an ad for Zeek to say that New Era needs some help, and we already gave them this amount, but they need this amount so they can cover this many more neighborhoods or be there twice the amount of time or something like that, because we need the help. So I think a lot of Detroiters need the information to be digestible.
Yes.
We have to speak everybody's language. It's about meeting people where they are.
That's the thing about it at the end of the day, because it's like, damn, what is this guy doing?
Had a motorcycle.
Let's give him a quick second out there, though.
Had the good Ducati out
Probably
there.
seen the ladies outside. So, all right, this is my time. And somebody, this is kind of like a story about myself for a second that kind of relates to that. One time, these kids knocked on my door, a few African-American fellows, and they were saying that there's like this mentorship program that they need funding for or whatever and whatnot. And I felt at the time, I was like, you know what? Like, I have enough pull in the city where if I pull up and help, like, it could help more than even just money. So I told them that. I was like, if I pull up and promote it and everything like that, it'll help. And then the kid looked at me. He's like, no offense, bro, but you're not our color. So he's like, you can't like promote us or be a part of us or like kind of represent for us or anything like that. And I was like, damn. So I just gave him money. I was like, all right, whatever, fine. I was like, fine, I understand.
Fine, just take this $5.
I gave him some cash and I was like, all right, I can't help you. I can't help you. You don't want me to help you. You don't want me to help you. And I've heard stories where not just organizations, like I'm not going to say New Era, but I've heard people donating to organizations or wanting to contribute that are outside of the ethnicity or culture. And then people will be like, well, we don't want your help. Like gentrification is a real thing and we don't want people coming in to help outside of the community, outside of the culture. So what do you say to people who are kind of more so like, if you're not from the culture of Detroit or if you're not from the city of Detroit, we don't want your investment? Like, is that something you ever see? And is that something you want to address?
I hear exactly what you're saying. I've never seen that per se.
Okay.
And if it happens, I think that's totally contradicting when someone says no one's helping out the hood, right?
Right.
I've never seen it per se. Now, if it's happening, that's the dumbest thing in the world. That's just how I feel. If you think you can do it on your own and you ain't did it yet, then somebody math ain't mathing. Mm. And so I haven't seen it. I wish I could find an example of it because it's probably a bad actor, a bad player in the game that's saying no, or they're just totally so pro-black. You have in every community. Every community but the African American community really moves like a unit until something happens. The African American community come together. But in other communities, the economic cohesiveness and the economic mobilization is there a little bit more. And so sometimes we just don't know how to deal with money or are setting ourselves up properly and preparing ourselves to receive money in the way that we know how. And so it goes with education to certain people. But Detroit is funny. I mean, I've seen a few clips about Trick and things like that and your experiences with Trick. I've only come across them a few times, but you know, this younger generation, all those who've followed Trick and some of the things, they might have got it confused at times if that's what they did. And I'm not saying Trick was to blame to that, but I am saying that the whole mentality, I'd say this in almost every other podcast, that whole Detroit versus everybody mentality, it can confuse some people. And it's almost like people are tired of being fragmented and scattered and not on the same side. Well, you got to get that mentality out your brain. You got to kind of, say Detroit is everybody, right? Or Detroit loves everybody or something like that.
It's so difficult because it's like you understand it from one perspective, like you have to protect the culture and protect what's been built, and you don't want other people leeching off of it because they could just leech off of it and disappear and all those types of things. But then what if it does help? What if it does contribute? Can you compare it to gentrification a little bit, or is gentrification its own unit of like idea?
Well, I think what might be happening, you might be hitting on something. I think what might be happening is Detroit has been begging for its time for a minute, ever since Eminem really got on. Detroit really didn't have anybody but Shine, and then now the group, the market is ready, right? And everybody actually pays attention to it now, right? Detroit dropped something, is very well capable of doing numbers, right? Or hitting the charts in some type of way. So we haven't even really arrived, but we're there and we've been listened to, almost like early Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know how long that's going to last. What I will say is that if the current leaders of Detroit rap and Detroit music are concerned or afraid that the style of Detroit rap might get tainted, anything like that, or it might get musically gentrified in some type of way, I really don't know how or what way to respond to that besides what are they taking? Are we afraid of losing out on opportunities, or are we afraid of being something new? I mean, you really got to start to ask. I don't live, and if you're real, I think half of these rappers, including Sada Baby, impresses me some of the most when he'll do a clip on some of the music that he listens to. He'll be listening to Jelly Roll or somebody like that. And you be like, Sada, why, you listen to Jelly Roll, but be singing every last country song and stuff like that. So shout out to Sada, Skilla and Wine over there. But, I think it's all about growing, but it is about protecting. You can't protect the sound.
Right.
Not with AI out. Not with
that's over with.
You can't protect the sound. So I don't think nobody has rights to anything when innovation is always lurking.
I want to ask about a lot of my friends do real estate in the city. Skilla Babies helped buy a block, I believe, and Viceroy Vezo is helping to buy some of the places he grew up at back and all these things. But they're saying like different countries are buying up real estate in Detroit now because the prices are so low. Does that help or hurt Detroit?
That was years ago. They were doing that.
Oh,
they've been doing that for years.
It's still happening?
Yeah, they were doing that for years. A lot of the foreign investors already did the wholesale game and then got out of here. It's been
so they already sold the houses back to Detroit?
Yeah, you got to think, when the foreclosure crisis happened, everything dropped. Yeah. And then you had houses for $500,000, $100. Land Bank was just giving houses away. Now it's a little harder to get them, and you paying probably a little bit more for little or nothing, right? And so I know people like Angela Yee, like you said, Skilla, and some others are buying blocks and things of that nature. I would say that it's inspiring to see them do that, just like it's inspiring to have them engaged in civic engagement and things like that. I ultimately believe that the real estate game in Detroit is going to suffer, both commercial and residential, just like other markets are suffering with this foreclosure crisis that we're going through right now. We're not really seeing it and feeling it, but it's there, and it's just a matter of time before certain markets end up experiencing it in a very negative way.
Wow.
I ultimately believe that Detroit has a funny market because we really need rent control, but we need to keep on building and updating our housing infrastructure. And in order to do that, you do need people to buy blocks, create some transition homes, some starter homes, some tiny home villages and things like that. I'm working with a few churches and things and other organizations that are doing that type of work. The issue becomes this. Just because Skilla Baby bought a block doesn't mean that neighborhood is going to turn around. Because who did he buy that block in conjunction with? Not who did he partner with, but who did he talk to in that neighborhood that's doing the next development or did the previous development that's going to get him to the next level. Now, he might have it all figured out, but the question is, for the new real estate person, for the commercial real estate person, if they're concerned about someone out of the country holding on to a property, with a leader like me in place who has a number of resources and understands tech and how to find that real foreign investor and see if they're doing that. I do have a church right now who says that he has, I've done the research, and they have a property right next to him that someone's holding. I'm going to get to the bottom of it, and they're not going to just be holding that property. And so these investors holding these properties, holding these homes, making the market go up, not allowing our young families to get in there. That's why people like Skilla, Vezo, and some others are making investments and starting to shift the narrative. But our churches and other organizations are doing it every day. I've individuals like the guy who built the castle and other places. They're doing the work, but is the city wrapping their arms around them? Are we showcasing them so that we can have others come in and build stuff around them? So now we have community, so that it runs into the community innovation hubs that I build. Yeah. So yeah, that foreigners are playing with the markets everywhere. Anywhere there's big money and they need a place play in a sandbox, they go find our sandbox. But what are we doing to protect it? Is the city assessing where legacy Detroiters have properties versus outsiders? There are ways to do that.
Wait, did you pay attention to the mayor Mike's run his term? Did you pay attention to what his agendas were when he initially started and what he was actually able to accomplish? Did you actually get to?
You know what? I ran for council 15 years ago. He's been in for 12.
Goddamn.
So the whole time he's been there, I've been sitting on the outside looking at everybody do what they are doing.
Did you appreciate the things that he did do, or do you think there was things that he could have improved on?
Anybody who's successful at anything, you got to appreciate.
Right.
He has had results. We can see those results. They're tangible. We can touch them. We can feel them. I want to double down on that. I want to double down on what can you touch, what can you feel, what can you see, what's tangible. Because some of the intangibles don't always increase morale, increase the spirit, keep people going, and moving towards the ultimate goal. And so you really have to show and prove. You know what I mean? We kind of live in a show me season to where if they can't see it and if it's not in their pockets, it doesn't matter. And so I believe he's done some great things. He's had results. But then I also understand where his disconnects have been, where he's not been able to rally, mobilize.
What areas do you think those are?
Well, I mean, get this. Like, you've never seen Mike Duggan be able to put all the faith-based leaders in front of one camera and say, this is what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Consider Trump trying to put pastors behind him during, once he takes office. I mean, you have the office. You have the ability to put these leaders behind you if you can create a common agenda. See, it's always about starting at that common denominator and working that agenda up to where you can get everybody's buy-in before you start making more nuance or more overarching, more in-depth goals to meet everybody where they are. And so the things that I would do differently as mayor would be to make sure that everybody's at the table first. And then when we get ready to make a move, we don't move unless we're all at the table, because these are the parts that we need participating and support at the table. And so his results are good, but I'm tech savvy. And when you have someone that's tech savvy, when you have someone that's coached basketball, when you have someone that knows families, knows churches, knows how to get in and out of entertainment, film, understands what podcasts go through, understand that our students and our youth could very well be telling the stories of our communities, could be telling their own stories, could be on better, quicker pathways to get to the point of entertaining their careers in different industries. I'm just a whole different beast. I'm a whole different machine when it comes to how to really dig deep and be able to connect the dots on things. So I like what he did. He had great results. I'm gonna double down on them, but I'm accelerating growth times 1,000,000 if possible.
If you got a couple more minutes,
No.
I wanted to ask you about do you feel like there is a drug crisis going on in Detroit, or do you feel like everything is kind of similar to what's happening in other states and cities as far as the level of issue that drugs create in the streets?
We're talking about hard drugs, right? Or are we talking about the
Class
cannabis industry?
Class
Cannabis
Yeah, well, no, I'm talking about talking about federally, like
opioids and
like,
stuff like that. Okay, and so I can speak to that. So Canada's always been right there. We've always had a huge Hispanic and Latino community. We're a distribution network for the whole Midwest. I mean, we're a distribution hub for the whole Midwest. You got to look at the dynamics that's flowing through this city. It's pretty.
Damn, the Latinos are staying low key, man. You don't really hear much about.
Well. I only say that because when you start talking about cartels and things of that nature,
right,
and how they move, we can't say that we're exempt from that movement because of where we're located at. I mean, we have the feds downtown in the public safety headquarters. So how and then you got to think about the human trafficking and those things that play on top of that. And so I feel that our biker clubs have a full understanding of how the streets move and how the underworld moves.
Whoa.
I think engaging our biker clubs, shout out to all my biker clubs out there, and supporting them almost in the same way that we support New Era, could very well help us to navigate more. But that's a police thing. And it's if it goes into federal laws and things like that, I can't necessarily speak to how you really deal with a drug problem if it exists. I don't think we have as much of a drug problem as some of the other markets, but I wouldn't say we don't. And so I've like those OD cases and things like that. I'll be honest with you, between the prosecutor's office and the police department and media, and with a mayor that has had a tight lid on media, I would have to do some more research into understanding what that epidemic might be if it's here.
We've had people come on that were affiliated with gangs in their past times, but reformed and, just started a new life. But they said, some people said that there's not really a gang problem in Detroit, but there's more so just isolated incidents of people that kind of showcase that gang activities, but not necessarily like gang problems. Do you agree with that, or do you see that there is some type of gang warfare going on?
Gangs in Detroit has never been the problem that's been like in the LA or in other markets, right? Mm-hmm. But they have been here. I know I've looked up a few times, and for some friends or acquaintances have been like, mention a gang or something, like, what? Like, where were they at? Where would they be at? And stuff like that. And so I think it's been here, but it hasn't really made or broke the situation, right? I think it's just normal activity that takes place in this underworld or this street world, as you would call it, that a lot of people are immune to or just totally unaware of. Like the new Detroiter coming into the city, you say gang to them, they're looking for a dude with a bandana and a hoodie and him robbing people or something like that. Gangs are way more sophisticated than what they used to be. They're organized crime, and they're more tactical and more digitally savvy than most people give them credit for. So
like the mob type shit.
Yeah. Nobody like gangs on the street in Detroit are not really, I don't think, shooting each other up. You have different facets. Now, gang activity, I think, spiked maybe in the last 10 years at one time, right? Possibly from things that I've heard. But quite honestly, shootings, I think, take place more than gangs.
What's the best way to address the shootings that have been happening? I talked to a doctor recently that said he used to work at Detroit's Receiving, and he said it was between 300 to 400 murders were happening per year, and that over 3,000 to 4,000 people were getting some type of traumatic case from shootings and whatnot.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Mayor Duggan just reported like 200 homicides or shootings or whatever, or deaths by gunfire, maybe in the state of the city. Don't quote me on that, but regardless, one person dying from a gunshot, from a gunshot is too many people dying. There has to be quick and critical response, and that it goes back to New Era Detroit and Detroit 300 and some of the other groups. Shout out to Mr. Blue over there. Once an altercation happens in the community, you have to get to the bottom of it and hopefully squash it. Mm-hmm. It's been a lot of times to where one thing happens, something else happens, and now there's a death or a homicide or something, when there could have been mediation and some type of resolution steps. So you really have to get the community involved to say, hey, this might get worse than what it is. We need some extra help in our community.
Yes.
Because normally, I believe in normal times when people get shot, it's not just, oh, I know you, I'm gonna come kill you later. No, it's a whole lot of other people involved, and people know this beef about to go down. They just don't know it got this serious because they don't got all the information. So, shootings, they have a few programs, the Green Light program, the Shot Stopper or something like that.
Shot Spotter.
Shot Spotter. Yeah, that's cool. I think it just goes to knowing the streets, you got to get some of these guns off the streets, not have them in the wrong hands. I don't think we had a buyback program in a long time. I would love to get some money to do another buyback program, get some of these guns off the streets.
No.
I know they floating around here. Yeah.
It's difficult, right? It's kind of like a police matter too, like how it's just scary because sometimes you'll see like officers take off on the scene too. Like, we're not touching that shit, and they just fucking peel out. Like you see footage of like officers kind of being played in their face, and then they're just like so startled by what some of these cats are doing that they don't even address like these crimes that are happening because it's just so crazy. Like there's footage on the internet of cops literally dipping from crime scenes.
Well, you got a young set of cops out there right now.
Yeah, and some of the guys aren't even from the city. That's what I heard. I heard a lot of people a lot of Detroit, not a lot. I heard some Detroit police officers are not from Detroit, and they're almost kind of like there, and they're almost like, I don't give a fuck about the community per se. I'm just getting my paycheck. I'm not trying to die today.
Yeah, I don't believe there are residency requirements right now. We need to incentivize the requirements for incentivize staying in the city. I believe policing inside the community that you live in is paramount. I've tried to have numerous conversations with neighborhood police departments and stuff like that over the course of the years, and even that process can be tricky because just the way the information flows and whether they respond or help you out and things like that. Yeah. They've been helpful, but I think programming could just be way better. And so I think it really comes down to community policing itself and being able to really, really create environments in which we're not allowing people to just be amongst each other at their just for nothing. They're coming together for a purpose, and when you come together for a purpose, less violence takes place.
Yes.
New family spaces, 100 new family spaces are in my plan as well.
When we're seeing the emergence of marijuana being sold at street corners legally now, are you seeing positive effects of that?
Well, I'm the one who helped pass legislation in 2017 for cannabis.
Really?
Yeah. And so I tried to make sure that legacy Detroiters got the best opportunity to benefit and profit from the industry. I know the social ills that derive from it, but I also know the opportunities and the medical solutions that come from it and help a lot of people out, especially those that have experienced trauma and things of that nature. And so I also understand what hemp does and how that can be used for a lot of different building projects and a lot of different things that can consider it being a raw material in its production and manufacturing. So, when you talk about things being sold on the street corner, that starts at the legislation and policy level because they didn't provide that person with opportunity. Wow. Right. When you make laws or policy for how you would distribute licenses, and you don't consider the opportunity, or you don't consider how Detroiters will be able to even plan that because you haven't assessed them, then you're going about the situation wrong, and then that person ends up selling weed on the corner because that's the only thing that they can do or get their hands on. And so that's the black market was always there for cannabis. Those who were displaced by the licensing and the actual regulation and the emerging of it being a legal, quasi-legal market, because it's still not federally legal. And so it's just some people who haven't caught up with the times. And it's sad that weed has been legal for 7 years and the city has not done anything within its business programming to help those type of entrepreneurs out, but it doesn't know how because it doesn't understand the industry. It needs a leader. Mike Duggan, I will say this, Mike Duggan never did anything for the cannabis industry. Now, he has, in his administration, done the right things to help keep the industry afloat, but he never advocated for it, and none of the city council members have done anything extravagant to really make sure the licenses get in the right hands. They read the reports and think they know what they're doing, but that's the difference between a businessman and a person that just thought they should be an elected official. You know, like if you don't understand business, then you're going to make the mistakes that you make. And then you tell me how many African Americans or legacy Detroiters have dispensaries.
Wow. So that business mindset is what's going to really help people understand what you bring to the table, to understand the intricacies of business constructs like that and how that could have been used for the city and how that could have used to make more money, right? So you understand that, which is crazy, right? Understand that business, I'm sure, because you helped pass. You said in 2017 you helped pass the bill for the legislation?
Yeah. So in 2017, the state created the medical marijuana program.
Yeah.
And that program, before recreational marijuana program was started, that program said if a city wants to opt into the program, they can. If not, you pass up any access to having any excise tax from what we tax the local licenses.
Gotcha.
And so in order for the city not to procrastinate, and like they did in 2018 to 2022 for rec, in 2017, we passed a ballot saying that the city has to opt in. It has an ordinance. The voters voted on it. The only thing that it didn't get, even though the voters voted on the second part, which was zoning could not be passed. So a lot of legacy Detroiters could not get their properties in position for licensing because the city council did not help create the zoning variances and the zoning plan that we suggested from the ballot.
Damn.
Yeah.
So they could have made a lot more money.
Come on, man.
That's crazy.
They could have had more dispensaries, or at least made sure that African Americans got access to owning dispensaries and licenses. If you look at the field right now, out of 75 plus dispensaries, I believe, or licenses, you probably have less than 10% black.
I mean, half of them are my friends. I'm serious.
No. They're my friends too. Like
a lot of Middle Easterners, a lot of Middle Easterners.
Yeah.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's not crazy because they're willing to get this. The community has to be ready for an investment opportunity.
Yes.
And so if it does not prepare itself, and like we talked about red tape, all this is going to come full circle. If it doesn't have the consultants or the lobbyists in place to navigate that red tape or to help them position themselves to be in place, then it's going to count on the elected officials to do it. And the elected officials aren't going to do it. They're just going to change the law and say this is not what it should be, and they're going to keep on going.
So what
they
are they
rarely
doing?
Listen.
What are they doing all day?
Man, I tell you, man. I asked somebody else, I'd be like, I was like, do they really have the pulse, or do they really do the homework, or do they really understand? And sometimes I wouldn't call it competence, even though that's what I really want to call it. And I've been calling it confused lately. They must be confused because if you sat there long enough and you haven't done the economic assessment, or if you haven't really looked at how many people are hurting, I ask a lot of times, how much money is really coming into our communities from these big corporations? Like total, like how much are we really getting? Because once you start to do that math, you can see the math at how much people need, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can follow that train of thought to see where you're missing or where the gaps are. But I swear, some of them, I think they just get ready for the next election cycle just so they can get back in the office. They don't.
I can imagine it just being a career to some degree, where it's literally just like this is just your career, and it's like you do what you can do to like get there and be in it.
Have you ever seen an elected official post a annual plan what it wants to accomplish this year?
That's another thing that's like crazy is like you kind of get most of your resources from the news, like on what's going on. I don't know if there is like a website that's like there's a government. I'm sure there's government websites that literally tell you like here's Detroit's plan, here's what the mayor's gonna do, and here's his direct statements about what he's gonna do. I don't know if those exist, but it would be nice to know like directly, like if there was something that keeps you updated, keeps you posted, or if you're even speaking on camera every day, like here's what we did today. Kind of like, even though this is kind of far off, like when Trump and Zelensky kind of had that meeting, even though that was like kind of whatever with it, it would be cool to kind of be in the rooms as a civilian and being like, whoa, this is what the conversations are happening, or like, oh, this is what we're doing. Or like how you're saying you're bringing the greatest minds together when you do your campaign to help you facilitate these ideas, to kind of be in the room, even if it's virtually, to see what you guys are talking about, to see what the plan is, and to have it kind of like broadcast, like, this is what we plan to do, here's the progress on what we're doing, and like kind of seeing the end result versus like hearing like money was put here and then we don't see the consequence of it, or we don't see the outcome of it ever, or we hear about it 10 years later. It would be cool to get constant updates about what's actually happening.
Yeah, some of it is, a lot of times they like to hide stuff. A lot of times they can't necessarily disclose certain things if it's in the works.
Because then people could get the heads up on what's going on.
Yeah, and then they'll try to invest in it and get. So there is a line of discreetness of secrecy that they do have to uphold.
For sure.
But in the same breath, when it comes to educating and engaging the citizens and having a participatory democracy, which simply means that you're allowing the individual to engage on your decision making on a consistent basis, and not only allowing them to engage, but giving opportunity for them to engage while you keep them up to date. And so technology and everything is at the point to where we cannot settle to continue to put leaders in place unless they're attempting to do that for us, and not having us to just come to one hearing or like you said, come to a town hall meeting where they kind of brush over the situation and there's no more time left.
What's the most, when you're at the town hall meetings, what's from civilians or from people from the city, what's the biggest concern that's constantly being brought up that's never addressed?
When I did my own roundtables, it was more so about the youth programming and family, and that's why I'm really running on what I'm running on now. A lot of times I will tune out to some of these things that the elected officials have because I know it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to be talk. And I go have my meetings to make sure that anything I miss, I caught, right? I truly believe that the individuals and the citizens that I see on a day-to-day basis are trying to protect their homes. If they're still in the city, then they need something to do because they can't find work, and every time they look up, they don't have any food sovereignty taking place. You either got Coney Island or a fast food situation. Very few grocery stores that keep, enough, or you got to drive 10, 15, 20 minutes. And for the person who doesn't have a car using public transportation, that could be a lot sometimes. And so it's just quality of life that they're looking for. They're looking for a better quality of life and more things that make their community a community again. I mean, I would try to go for a coffee shop today, and I had to go at least 15 minutes.
You know what killed me one time is when I was in the city, I was working and doing some projects, and then I went to a Burger King, and I was a vegetarian at the time. So I was like, can I get a salad? And they're like, we don't serve salads here. So I went to a McDonald's and I did the same thing. I was like, can I get a salad? They're like, we don't serve salads here. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about?
McDonald's and Burger King?
In Detroit, yeah. And
they don't probably no more. Probably nobody eats them.
But the thing with the trip, I was like, bro, can't you just take the lettuce and tomato that you put on the burger and onions that you put on? But I was like, why would you just remove something that you can make off of the menu? Is it because it's not selling? Like, what's the purpose of taking away these items that are like more nutritious than eating like a freaking double cheeseburger?
They do it by market. A lot of food chains do it by market. But I wouldn't necessarily blame it on the restaurants. I'll blame it on the lifestyle and what we push, right? I mean, I truly believe that you have some healthy options. Detroit is primarily majority black, and ultimately, there's only so many healthy options that are coming from us. So, I mean, that might be a factor. But, I mean, you got to think. You just said, Coney Island, Middle Eastern, they done bought a lot of the diners and stuff like that, and they control the market when it comes, and they just offer a variety of things. So, it's like, Gotta go to Coney. It's almost like that's all you know. That's
yeah, and the liquor
Lunchable.
stores too. Like the liquor stores, literally, it's just like straight junk food, right?
Oh man,
and the bare necessities for home stuff, household stuff.
Yeah, and then when you start looking at things that you really want to cook with, you got to go across 8 Mile or go to Dearborn or something like that. I just think that
it's crazy, man.
Yeah, it's definitely a crazy thing when you start talking about how to really feed your family and get those issues taken care of.
The last thing I wanted to kind of ask you about was, when we talked about influence, and I hope I'm not crossing any lines here when I ask you about this, but when we're talking about influence and people that are running for this election, one person's name that's going to stand out is obviously Mary Sheffield. And you can see the past decade how much involvement she's had in the community, with the entertainers, with everybody, just everybody, as many hands and people she can touch, she is doing so. Have you looked at what she's proposing? Have you looked at how she's running her candidacy, and do you appreciate it? And also, do you think that there's things that separate you guys and make you more still valuable as the person who's running over her?
Yeah, so I've looked at all candidates. I've actually tried to talk to them over the last year and a half. That's what brought me to this point. I didn't see a pathway. I didn't see the best leadership available for the city. I didn't see business minded. And so I applaud all of them for at least considering getting in the race. Mary is probably the only one that's on the ballot right now. The others have to make the ballot before the deadline. Hopefully they all do. I'm not concerned about any competition or any other candidates. They don't play at the level I do. Their ships don't sink like mine, and they are not on the same plane. What I do is far beyond anything that they've done or will be or are doing right now. They can't go to Miami and call up billionaires and be on a yacht tomorrow. I can. They can't really make deals in Africa, in the Bahamas or the Caribbean islands, or be able to really even navigate the Canada Windsor scene like I can. They really don't understand entertainment and film, and the way that the scene moves. They really don't even know how to call the head of Kevin Hart Studios, Brian Smiley, who went to Renaissance. Now they know, because they'll be out there, but they don't know who those people are in the industries. They don't know who designed the weather department at Waymo, but he's sending it right up under their noses. It's those type of pieces of talent that they don't know how to really identify. So if they haven't identified them now, how are they going to identify the youth that has that idea? How are they going to make this the innovation capital of the world?
And that's why I brought up Mary, because from the aesthetic, like just viewership wise, when I'm looking at what she's doing, it seems like she's heavily evolved to the point where she does have access and understands a lot of the people that is important to be associated with genuinely too. Like she's there because she genuinely wants to be there, and people reciprocate her, and I think people appreciate her energy and her vibrancy and her articulation of ideas and what she's proposing. So is that the closest you think it is as far as understanding and having access to the same people, or do you still think like you differentiate by having more access and understanding than that?
I think it's total understanding of everything.
Yeah.
I think if we just want to speak about her specifically, which I normally don't do, but because you asked, I don't shy away from any question. I don't beat around the bush.
Yeah.
Again, I ran for council before her. When she got on, it was because others had broken the barrier for her to get there. A lot of the work that her grandfather started, her father continues, and that she's been about is a legacy generational thing. My grandmother grew up with Rosa Parks and was a dispatcher in a bus boycott. My grandfather helped out the riots. I understand legacy. Part of my family legacy is Moses, which is a faith-based organization that trained the organizer, Johnny Turnage, who created Black Tech Saturdays. You don't have to be in front of the camera just to make impact or to be quality and value to the market, to the city, or to the ecosystem. And so where I think I've given enough opportunity for any leader over the last 15 years to show me why they should be the next leader, is that when you look at national initiatives such as decriminalization, prisoner reentry, and those type of things, when you look at trauma to solution, when you look at tech and where it's going, you can't show me a candidate that can speak to all three. They might be able to speak to one and say, I worked in the jail, or they might be able to say I'm a minister and preacher, I can talk to families, but they're almost confined to their experience. When you have such a diverse background as I do and such an experience in multiple industries like I do, you can't necessarily compare that to someone who's kind of been in one space, kind of just been moving around in that one space trying to make something happen. I'm a winner. And so from playing sports, being the point guard, being the hustler, not having to be the shooter, but really understanding the nuances of the game to be able to make my team win, because I don't care about the points. I care about winning. I don't care about money. I care about winning. I care about impact. Then you're looking at the bigger picture. Again, they don't fly at the level that I fly at, so they can't see what I see. Therefore, they're only going to be able to help you as far as their ceiling and as far as they've been able to take themselves. And I'm sad to say, if we want to stay a Detroit of yesteryear, cool. But if we want to be an international innovation hub and we want to be something better than what we've ever seen before and dream again, then we got to pick a leader that does that. I'm the only leader that does that. I don't care what anybody else says or does. They don't have the experience and they can't speak to anything. If they speak to any of those points that I just made, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna do laps around them, because they haven't been here long enough. They can't talk about programming languages, autonomous shuttles, and advanced air mobility. They'll be wasting their time even trying to learn this quick.
That's one thing I was reading about with you, that you're trying to integrate AI and you're trying to build a infrastructure through the internet, which is a powerful idea. It's obviously going to be heavily costful, because I know how much it costs to manage networks and things like that. You don't think it's going to cost a lot of money?
Oh man, see, that's why that's why I'm trying to tell people. People don't understand what I just told you. I know I talk to every day the guy who designed the weather department for Weibo, who helped the autonomous car predict fog 2 hours before it comes.
Damn.
You telling me that he's not already working on a solution to help out situations like what's taking place in Tucson, Arizona, when the indigenous people are getting blackouts because of the automotive suppliers and the automotive manufacturing companies? And I believe, don't quote me, but I think IBM is down there too, but they're taking all the grid power because of the quantum computers that they're getting for AI, et cetera, et cetera.
Damn.
So don't think it can't happen in our back door if we have a major tech giant or a major manufacturing giant who wants to leverage AI and citizens or people start experiencing different things.
Is that something that you're the only candidate that's offering that concept of building that digital infrastructure? Are you like one of the only people thinking about this idea?
We're already doing it in other places.
But for Detroit, I'm saying
I'm saying, of course I am. They don't even know how to mention this type of things. They don't understand the first step.
It's the best possibility because everybody has phones, everybody has computers, everybody has access to, and especially if you make it easily digestible, like you mentioned earlier, then people can figure out where their resources are way sooner than, again, going to these departments to figure everything out, which is a crazy concept if you think about it.
When I get done with this thing, if they elect me when they elect me mayor, the type of things that we're going to share and the type of things that my tech teams are working on, and if it's being able to be attached to a municipality,
yes,
it takes things to a whole nother level. And I'm saying that just because when I say someone can navigate the whole city from their phone, what if while they're navigating, they're getting paid and they're getting incentivized for help for them going through the process?
Yes. One of my friends was talking about the bankruptcy issue that had happened. I think it was less than a decade ago. About. Are people still concerned that could happen again?
It can't happen again.
Okay.
It can happen with the next leader. That's why this election is so crucial.
Right.
You can get a leader that very well doesn't know what they're doing. We're back in bankruptcy. Then we're talking about a whole nother level of a lot of problems.
Yes.
Big ups to one of the candidates. They were around during some of that bankruptcy stuff. but they don't understand business enough to really navigate us through this. We're about to lose a lot of federal funding, and then we still have to ask for the White House to help us out. First of all, you need a clear line to the White House. That I do have. Yeah. Maybe one other candidate might have that. I have clear lines to the White House. That is not a problem. Trust me. We can get there. The second thing is you have to fill in the gaps for the federal funds that are disappearing. And so not only the federal funds, but other gaps that need to be filled, and you have to raise money. So you're really patching the hole that Duggan's been using a bucket to get out the ship the whole time. Wow. You got to patch that hole and improve the ship real time. You need a businessman to do that. If not, you're going to be so focused on affordable housing or one of those other cliche terms that they throw out to you, and they're going to get distracted and not really concentrate. I'm the only mayor. I mean, thank God I'm speaking in existence, but I'm the only candidate that has actually went out there looking for other mayors to help go after more federal funds and increase their capacity to do so. No other candidate can say that they went around the country, Strong, Arkansas, or anywhere else, to go help mayors, educate them on what they can possibly go get because they have a shortage. This is what I do on a daily basis. And that's why I can't keep track of all the rappers in the city. I have these blurs because I go study and I go do these things in order to see the bigger picture.
Right. Quick note for everybody: you coached Skilla Baby at one point.
Yeah, we coached Skilla over at UPrep. I forgot. He told me one day while we was at a small birthday gathering or something like that. I coached Skilla Baby. I coached at Renaissance. He was at UPrep after we left Renaissance. I actually coached him with now Judge Sabri over at 36th District and Yusuf Sabri, who's over at WC3, 36th District and WC3, the Sabris.
Amazing.
And we had a good time over there. I love me some basketball, man. If I could get out there and spend more time. But Marcus Stout, I played with him. He's at the Motor City Cruise.
That's cool.
As head coach. Joe Carr, I think he was over at River Rouge.
Do you think you're going to take more of a Chauncey Billups approach or a Cade Cunningham approach with this?
To the mayor thing?
Yeah.
Chauncey Billups or who?
Cade Cunningham, even though he's a rookie. What? I mean, youngie.
I'm more like a Chauncey.
Yeah.
I love Cade.
He's too young though, man.
But I'm like a Chauncey. Chauncey, I've been around the game a long time. And when it's time for the big shot, it's time for it. Now, Cade is getting there. Cade is right there. But, you know, Mr. Big Shot, during that run when we won those back-to-backs,
man,
that's classic. You know what I mean? You can't. They won back-to-backs, right? Chauncey did.
No, he won.
They only won one.
They only won one. Finals the next year, but they lost the Spurs.
It felt like back-to-back. I wanted to give them more than what it was.
You get there, right? You get to the finals, you feel like you did it.
It felt like a back-to-back, but no. I'm glad I cleared that up so they didn't think I don't know my sports. But my cousin plays for the Lions.
Really? Who?
Chris Smith, number 90.
Oh, cool.
Shout out to Chris. Lions, y'all better keep him. If y'all don't, give him a raise, and then, you know, make sure he get traded to somebody who go keep him.
Yeah.
But he been on for 2 years. You know, we got. I stay abreast.
And I know I keep asking you one last question, but I just
go.
When we're talking about, I have a lot of friends that have went through the prison systems. I don't know if you know Marvin Kahn Jr. is, but he was like wrongfully in prison for over 20 years. He got released a couple years ago. Talked about prison reformity and everything like that. And I've talked to people who've gotten out, who've done long bids, and the biggest problem is finding work and finding housing after they get out of prison. How are you looking at reformity, and how are you looking at how to help people that have gotten out of prison regardless of what crimes they might have committed in the past?
So I think it's a total advocacy approach that I trust the thought leaders and the experts when I see them. Kenneth Nixon, don't forget I told you, or shouted you out, Kenneth. But Kenneth Nixon, from what I see, he's the go-to thought leader and the person really advocating the right way. Darrell Woods, I believe he came out of, who's the current chair of the Detroit Board of Police Commissioners. he's been in the mix and doing a number of things along the years. Shout out to Darryl Woods. Thank you for all the work that you continue to do as well. But Kenneth, when I sat down with him for coffee, he shared some things with me that really had me to see advocacy in a different way. Even though I call myself an expert sometimes, you can always learn. So I like being a student in the game. He showed me some things. And so I believe that, not necessarily based off of that conversation, but ultimately decriminalization, reentry, as well as mass incarceration kind of has to get looked at the same time. But ultimately, the systematic things that are wrong need to be changed. And so I think all three of those prongs have some of the same systematic issues, and you have to deal with the systematic issues. And so I'm all for everything that gets anybody back into good standing and a good quality of life. Because I think that's one of the worst things, to have served your time and then come out and feel like everybody has turned their back on you when you, quote unquote, repaid your debt.
Yes.
That's the worst feeling in the world, to feel that it's almost like you got taken advantage of.
Yes.
And it doesn't make you a good citizen or a good neighbor. It creates another sense of trauma.
Yes.
And so how we surround those people that we claim have paid their debt, I think is very important. So I'm never looking to avoid that conversation. I'm always 2 feet in, throw my whole body in, because it's not about protecting somebody that hurt somebody else. It's about helping someone who's being outcasted unnecessarily. And sometimes I believe, we need to be a little bit more sympathetic to those people.
With everybody that's employed with the motor companies, is there anything that you think they're at risk of, or any problems that you see arising that you can help with if you're elected?
With the, like, GM, the big three?
Yeah, the big three. Yeah.
Well, they've lost market control from an electric perspective to Tesla. I think that's kind of apparent. Tesla is the big dog, right? And Tesla is in the White House. It ain't looking good.
Damn, you're right. I never thought about it like that.
I mean, I do 1 + 1 = 2.
I never thought about that.
I mean, if you're trying to compete, then we got to hedge our bets a little bit better. Now, what's funny to me is every corporation or everybody's like, I'm not political, or I'm not political, but then you go work for a company that's investing in a political party. No, you're political. You just don't know how you're being used.
Man.
And so I think Ford and GM has a need. Ford, GM, and I guess Stellantis or whatever, they need to be able to really put together the right strategic plan to getting to the future. Just because you say EV cars just because you say electric vehicles doesn't mean that you're preparing the infrastructure for the future. Mm-hmm. And so I think they need to look more at the infrastructure. I think that there's some opportunities for them to grow. I think the Michigan Central is a great example of how we can start to innovate. But that's what I'm talking about, Michigan Central, new labs. How do we get everyone coming here for our brain trust and our thinking capacity and our IP versus trying to manufacture everything? The new manufacturer is the new manufacturing is innovation.
Yeah, you have to create something that everybody else wants to license or use.
Yeah.
Wow. Damn.
Yeah. We can't. Yeah.
You're creating everything that's off of somebody else's idea, but if you create the idea that everybody else needs to use, you make more money, right?
Yeah.
And you're the one manufacturing it too at the same time. That'd be crazy.
Yeah.
That sounds crazy though.
We got to be an assembly line for ideas.
Yeah. That's a tough one. Because it's like brilliant minds. You got to get those people, and they're already hired by the big dogs.
No. See, you're thinking about it a little bit wrong.
Mm.
An idea can spark from a young person.
True.
How do we create an assembly line for that idea?
Mm.
Are we shipping the idea to market? I'm not talking about are we giving that person credit? Yeah, we need to give them credit. I'm not talking about how do we put all these people in place because they're here. We just need to put them in place. I'm just saying, how do we get that idea to the world?
Yes.
And does the circulation of that profit or that revenue or that value come back to the city?
What is the biggest fear that you have that can take place that you know you're capable of handling? But if you weren't elected, you're concerned that this thing will not get addressed for the city of Detroit.
I believe we're not going to be in position and we're going to get left behind. I've seen too many people try to win and lose along the way, and I'm trying to correct that path. You this time again is so crucial. I think what we're in the midst of potentially losing, if not with the right leadership, the opportunity for an Olympics. Right now, I think I mentioned this in some of my plans or articles, or you might have seen it in the paper. I want to bring something like Art Basel here. If they're not willing to come, I'll create my own. But I want to bring like an Art Basel here because it brings the arts, it brings a number of major investors to the city to look at the city. I also want to create weather-free or element-free year-long areas in our city, so that we don't have to deal with the bad winters and people don't continue to get depressed or feel like they can't come outside and our interactions stop. And so there's just a whole slew of innovative things that can be done, which goes back to, you know, the original point of opening ourselves up, right, and trying something that has never been tried before.
Yes.
We're hustlers, man. Like we do it, but we have to do it intentionally.
Yes. Is there any dates or any events that people can come and support you at?
Yeah, so April 2nd, actually this Wednesday, we'll go, if this episode hasn't aired already, we're going to do a Let's Talk About the State of Detroit. We invite all candidates, anybody in Detroit or a stakeholder in Detroit to come attend. We're going to release our calendar events soon as the ballot closes and all the candidates are officially on the ballot, in which we will be doing a community crawl, as well as we'll be doing a number of things to support Neighborhoods Day this year, because we really feel that to honor Luther Keith, who was an excellent journalist. I hope you get a chance to read his story one day. He really tied and kept the community together over the last 19 plus years. This year's the 19th, next year is the 20th day of anniversary of Arise Detroit Neighborhoods Day. And so, though, you know, I told everybody I'm not promoting my events, but I'm promoting Neighborhoods Day and honoring Luther Keith, as well as making sure that we support all of our community organizations on the grassroots level. So I'll be if you're in the community, you tell me about your event, I'm coming there. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I don't like doing fundraisers just for me. I'm all about community.
And is there any way that people can support the campaign? Any resources, any websites or anything like that?
Yeah, we got some cold drip. We got some cold drip.
I seen the hoodies.
We got some drip, bro. And I'm putting some new items on the website pretty soon.
Cool.
Go buy a shirt. VoteBarlow.com/shop SHOP. VoteBarlow.com/shop. Or you can just do VoteBarlow/get-involved. That's GET-involved. You can donate there, but everything's on VoteBarlow.com. It's not hard to navigate the site. We make it very user friendly, and you can kind of get whatever you want. We got some cold shirts. Go get, if you don't want to support my campaign, you still might want to go get you a Let's Win Detroit shirt. That Let's Win Detroit, I don't know. That might be a piece of merch that, you know, you can rock no matter what ball game or anything like that. I really like it. I didn't know what it was going to really turn into when I thought about carrying on the messaging, but sure. I really like that real brand. For
sure, man. I definitely appreciate you coming on and doing this, man. This was very insightful, very motivational and inspiring to hear your ideas. And you're using ideas, like you said, that there's new technologies that are available. There's new ways of reaching people. there's new resources and a new way of delivering those resources to people that I think you're tapping into, which a lot of people of the older generation might not fully understand yet. And even when you come down to presidency, it's like presidents of these past few elections have really understand the use of the internet to kind of help, get their faces shown to these younger audiences that don't watch the news or don't watch TV or might not be going on YouTube to search, local interviews or local segments for people that they're voting for. But now it's like understanding these concepts, understanding how to reach the youth, understanding how to make resources available to people in a more deliverable way, in a more reasonable way, a feasible way. You're taking those approaches and you're attacking those approaches, which makes me like a supporter, man. That's like cool as hell that you're doing that. Like, I like that. I like when people are innovative and they understand logistics and they understand how to deliver these things in a more feasible manner than people having to go from here to here to here to here to get one thing done. You're figuring out a way to streamline it and make it all happen within one route, which is really cool. Appreciate you doing this, man. Look forward to seeing the outcome of it, man. You got my support, man. This is fucking awesome.
Man, I appreciate you, and I just want to say lastly, thank you for all that you do, for being an industry leader, for being a leader in Detroit.
Yeah.
Because just because you trying to put on the market and put on the city, which I don't care what nobody say. If they ain't got 300, well, how many episodes you got?
We're at 508.
Come on, man. If they ain't got 100, I wouldn't listen to them. If they got 500, then they can say something, but they don't get to tell you that you're not doing a great job. Nobody gets to tell you that you're not making impact and that you're not trying to move people forward. You know what I mean? I don't see any real selflessness in what you're doing.
Thank you.
And that's what I love about you and everything that I've seen thus far. I just want to see more great things, great things come from you, because we should have a Joe Rogan. We should have some of those other personalities that can cross into real life and stay in the entertainment and understand that everybody is, a person.
We're all trying at the end of the day to push the scene forward. And at the end of the day, people, it's always funny because when people don't get to know you, they assume things about you. And that happens with, I'm sure, in the political end too. I'm sure people assume things when they see things about you, but then once they actually have a conversation, which I'm sure you've met people face to face, and their whole idea of you changes like within a second, right? And that's the problem, is like when you don't stay in touch to the level that you wish you could, people can generate these discrepancies, and all you can do is things like this to show like how hard I work to make sure we got somebody to make everything happen today is my commitment to showing how much I care about getting somebody on that can share visions that can help change the future for the city. So I appreciate you again for doing this, man. We're at Parallel Sound Studio, High Level Visuals, Shooting His Productions. We're out. Peace.
This episode was brought to you by Kid L Productions. For music video, photography, event video, video production, consulting, and more. Book with Kid L today.